In section 1.8, we'll talk about this idea of a regression equation. We like regression equations because they model data that isn't perfectly fitting to one of our functions. So data in the real world is rarely perfectly linear or perfectly exponential or perfectly anything. And so we have to take our data and make what you may have heard of as a line of best fit. So you will definitely need your calculator for this section. A lot of this work is calculator work up front and then just analyzing the information that your calculator gives you at the end. So I've got some data here that gives the annual cost of annual tuition and fees at a 4-year public university adjusted for inflation to $2018. So for example, in the year 2008, tuition on average was $7.6 thousand. My job is to take this information and put it in my calculator to make a scatter plot and get an equation for a line of best fit, even though it's not perfectly linear. So getting our calculators out, I've got some stuff from our previous examples. I'm going to go ahead and clear that. I'll clear my whole calculator, second plus 7, 1, 2, and now I'm good to go. As we do this example together, you'll notice that you see the calculator screen shown here on your notes. I'm going to walk you through the steps so that we can compare what's on my calculator screen to what's on our notes. So the first set of directions says we can make a scatter plot of this data by going to the Stat menu and choosing Edit. The Stat button is right here by the arrows, and I'm going to select number 1 for Edit. Then in my L1 column, I'm going to put my years since 2000, and in my L2 column, I'm going to put my tuition. So if I move my calculator just a little bit so I can see it, I'll actually move it a little over here. In this first column, I'm going to type my top row. So 08 and then hit enter. 09 and then hit enter. And notice how the zeros are going away. That's fine. 10, enter, 11, keep entering them with me. 12, 13. I notice we skip the year 14 and we go straight to 15, 16, and 17, and lastly 18. Now I want to hit my over button and I want to type in my bottom row. So 7.6, hit enter, 8.3, and I'm just going to keep going by typing in this list of the bottom row numbers. If you do make a mistake ever, you can go and just clear one number at a time, or if you scroll up and say highlight this L2 and then hit clear, it clears the entire row for you. All right, so now I'm at 9.5. Okay, so now that I have all my information entered, I want to make sure, double check that I entered it all correctly. The first thing I always want to do is make sure that my last two numbers line up. If maybe you forgot to put something in a L1 and you have something extra in L2, you won't be able to move forward and you'll get an error message. But right now, it looks like all of my data is entered well. So I'm at this part of my screen. And now we need to set up our scatter plot and get our calculator ready. So we want to go to the Stat Plot menu by hitting second and then Y equals. And right now how this plot says off, I want it to say on because I typed things into L1 and L2. So I'm going to hit enter. On is now blinking. I'm going to hit enter again so that on is the only thing that's highlighted. And I'm going to hit second Y equals one more time just to make sure that that plot 1 is actually on. Now that that plot is on, my calculator will actually graph those points for me. However, if I just hit the graph button, I'm probably not going to have a very good window and I'm not going to see all of my points. So in order to get a good window, I hit this zoom button and you'll notice that number 9 says zoom stat because we typed in statistics. So when I hit number 9, I see all of my data points shown from my list. Now, my job is to actually find a linear regression equation that best models the data. And like we said, this is not perfectly linear at all. We're just trying to find an equation that we can use to model the data in order to make predictions. So I hit my stat button again. I go over to calc. Number 4 says linreg ax plus b, which looks like our linear equation mx plus b. I'm going to hit enter. A helpful hint here is, we'll talk about storing the equation actually a little bit later. So right now, I'm going to go down and just hit calculate. And you'll see I have a similar screen to what's shown on your notes here. We will talk about R values a little bit later, but right now you don't really need to understand what they are. I have my equation y equals ax plus b, where a is 0.242 and b is 6.237. So we'll write that down on our notes in the next video.